Hello and welcome. Today we're making two versions of a super easy dessert using pre-made puff pastry shells. While I'm using blackberries here, this will also work wonderfully with any type of fruit. For the non-dairy eating folks like myself, the second one uses no dairy, and I go over how to make that work just a little bit better. So with that in mind, let's get started with the shells. First, we will need to preheat our oven to the temperature specified on your packaging. Mine was calling for 400 degrees, but I found that the puff pastries tended to puff up a little better in my oven at 425, so I ended up using that temperature. Next, we want them to be frozen and right in the freezer until the moment we are ready to bake them. The colder they are, the more evenly they will rise, and the more they will rise. So directly from the freezer to a sheet pan with either parchment or a silicone mat. You want them to be a minimum of an inch away from each other and the outer edges. If they're closer than that, then they won't puff up as much because the cold just kind of pockets in there, in between them. Now my oven, like most home ovens, has both hot and cold spots. As you can see, while this bakes, the left side of my oven is a bit cooler than the right and the rear is hotter than the front. So in my case, at about 12 to 14 minutes, and when they have noticeably risen some, we're going to rotate them. This is also why I increase the temperature while baking. Since you lose a lot of heat when you open the door to rotate them, we go with a higher heat, and when we drop down, it doesn't drop as far below 400 degrees. And for puff pastries, one of the things that really hurts their rise is going under that 400 degree mark, so this keeps us out of that. Once they are golden brown and look like this, we are ready to let them cool for about 20 to 30 minutes. Once they are cooled, we want to remove the interior. The frozen shells tend to have the center already cut to facilitate removal like this, so all we'll need to do is take a paring knife and gently cut around that circle directly downwards. You want to cut about 80% of the way down, even if you don't feel like you're cutting anything in some areas, because the layers are super thin and they're not going to have much resistance, so you really won't feel that you're cutting something. Once you're cut, you can use the knife or a fork to pull out the center. Some people will take it all the way down and pull out all the layers that look a bit underdone, but I tend to leave at least some of them in because they help block the whipped cream from soaking into the actual crispy layers below. Once your shells are decentered, we are ready to make our dessert. Let's look at what we'll need for the normal version. Actually, real quick, let's take care of the blackberries since both are going to need those as well. For these, you just need some blackberries or whatever you have. You want to kind of be able to split it in half if it's a fruit. And don't forget to taste some of your fruit or berries if you're using them. Make sure they're not too tart. Blackberries can sometimes be a bit too tart, and if they are too tart, a light dusting of powdered sugar on top of the blackberries later in the final dessert will actually take care of most of that. Alright, so for the first and more standard version, we're going to need one package frozen puff pastry shells, fruit of any kind, I'm using blackberries myself, berries as well as fruit I should say, and some whipped cream and a little bit of powdered sugar. So this is going to look pretty fancy and like you spent a bunch of time making this. And since the puff pastry is the complicated part, and we're using pre-made, we get the easy bits of just filling in a few things and adding a few ingredients together. First, we want to cover it in a light layer of powdered sugar. Just put down some in a mesh strainer and tap on that for a good light dusting. Doing this off the side of a spoon tends to result in larger pockets, so I do recommend using a strainer if you have one, but it can be done with a spoon just by tapping it off the side. The center needs a bit more powdered sugar than the outer edges. This layer will also help prevent the whipped cream from soaking past and quickly to soak the bottom of the puff pastry. So make sure you get a good coverage inside. Once you're sugared, we just want to add a layer of whipped cream, followed by a layer of your fruit or berries, another layer of whipped cream, and a final layer of berries. For this one, I went and added a dab of whipped cream to hold the center on the top on the center right there in the middle, and a final dusting of light powdered sugar, and that version is ready to go. Before we start making the next one, a huge thank you as always for everyone who's watched, liking, subscribing, and sharing, and commenting on the videos. It really helps the channel grow, and it means the world to me and the cat bosses. Adorable fuzzy little bosses, but they are bosses. And for those who have not subscribed yet, if you're enjoying this video, subscribe for more like it, more cat pictures, and more food-related videos. So, for the non-dairy version, we just need shells, berries, whipped topping, and the extra guest is vanilla. Real vanilla tends to get overpowered somewhat by whatever the creamy taste is in the whipped topping, so the cheap stuff is perfectly fine here. Now, a second version for people like myself who can't have dairy. There are some options. Ready Whip makes a non-dairy whipped cream that works as a direct drop-in replacement for that, and for that you'd only have to follow the previous example in your set. So instead of that, I figured we'd go over the other option. The So Delicious non-dairy whip topping, aka the sort of non-dairy Cool Whip, generally found in the freezer department near your puff pastry shells. Now for this, we probably want to make some modifications. Most non-dairy topping has a bit of a coconut taste, so instead of making that an accidental flavor, let's make it a feature. If we take a little splash of about an eighth of a teaspoon of vanilla extract or fake vanillin and mix it with the outer layer of the whipped cream, leaving the middle still in largely unmixed or large chunks of unmixed, we get a flavor that alternates between vanilla and coconut. Now, with that mixed, we just want to follow the same pattern as the last one. A layer of topping, a layer of berries. Layer of topping, and a layer of berries. I had this cute tiny blackberry that was more round than anything, so instead of slicing it in half, I put it on top where the last one had the whipped cream, and let the top sit on the rim. I really liked that look, and how it balanced on the rim looked nice to me. A final dusting of powdered sugar, and we are good to go. I also tried covering some in cocoa powder and dusted that on. It looked okay, not bad, but also not great, so I'd probably just stick to the powdered sugar. And with that, we've now made our non-dairy and more traditional versions. While you can make your own puff pastry, honestly the shells and sheets they sell in stores are about 90% as good as you could possibly make, and they're about 1,000 times more convenient. So things like this are an excellent way to have a semi-fancy looking dessert with fairly little effort on your part, and that's always a win, especially during the holidays when you got a busy schedule. And with that, a final thank you for all for watching, and I hope you have a great day and a great meal.